Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. So today embarks the first day of 2018, and with that, the first day of a new year for the Grand Solar Minimum channel. I wanted to start off today with a couple announcements. First, I wanted to address the situation with the departure of Lee Wheelbarger. That was done on a personal conflict of interest. The views of the Grand Solar Minimum channel and Lee Wheelbarger are in agreement, and we have learned many things from Lee Wheelbarger. But as I stated earlier, this was more of a personal conflict of interest, and from there we are moving forward. The videos with Valentina Zarkova and John Casey are going to be re-released. We were asked by Lee himself that his name or his voice not be used on our channel anymore. So we have edited the videos of Casey and Valentina Zarkova. Mari will speak on behalf of Lee and ask the same exact questions. It'll just be edited with Mari's voice asking the question instead of Lee. Now, we've had these videos down for a few months, and the reason why we're doing this is that we're getting a lot of requests for the videos. People still want to see the videos, and Mari and I both agree that the information is solid enough and it should be available. So just to get that, to start everything off, to let everyone know, that way there's no questions moving forward. Happy New Year, and thank you for joining us today on the Grand Solar Minimum channel. So anyway, moving along, I want to show off a new feature for the Grand Solar Minimum channel. And we're trying to take things up a little bit. This is our forum that is also right now being incorporated with the grandsolarminimum.com, the website that Mari has built and has continued to build. Along with the YouTube videos, I think it would be in the best interest to have this link available to our subscribers here on YouTube. And this can be a spot where we could all come together and discuss various topics. We have space weather down here, which is the solar updates. I've already put in a few already, of course, knowing me. Just a few things, a brief summary of what the solar conditions are for the day-to-day. But Mari kind of surprised me with this. I knew that she had been working on getting a website going for the Grand Solar Minimum channel. We wanted to expand our platform. And as we said last year before the departure, we wanted to focus more on reporting the Grand Solar Minimum as it happens. Predictions are welcomed and thoughts are welcome. Discussions on what could happen are also welcome. But we don't want to be fixated on a channel that wants to be first on something. We just want to report and educate as many people as possible about the Grand Solar Minimum and what's to come. Like I told you before, Mari and I firmly believe that this is definitely a very impressive beginning to a minimum on any scale. We've seen more and more articles jump up in the mainstream media talking about the records are going to be broke because we're going into a solar minimum. And just a year ago, there wasn't anybody talking about, in the mainstream, we weren't talking about cold records being broke. We were talking about all blue event by 2017, where all the caps had been melted, and we would see our first all blue event by 2017. That claim was made in 16, by the way. So as you see, we're nowhere near that. In fact, we have seen probably the most coldest weather since the 2013-2014 polar vortex. And just wanted to share this quickly with you guys on drroyspencer.com. He has paid attention to this as well. He's been documenting this well before the minimum starts on global warming. Is it man-made? And the one thing I like about this website is that whether it's cold or hot, the facts don't get hidden. He doesn't try to manipulate anything on his site, even if it does not go with his agenda. He reports it straight up. So I appreciate the integrity of his work on this channel, and I think I'll always respect his work just because of this right here. But another good site that I follow, and I'm kind of a geek on this, I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait for the first of every month because he gives out the new chart, the graph for the anomaly for the global. And, you know, we were always talking about that 0.88 up here back of February 16, and, you know, that's where a lot of the global warmists have really been hanging their hats on, was this event here and the continuation of this line, how it's gone up. But here we've seen the result for November was at a 0.36. Now that was down from a 0.63. All right. And a lot of people are saying that the grand solar minimum is only going to amount of 0.3 Celsius in global cooling. Well, if that's the case, just in the first year alone, we don't have December's numbers out yet, but there's a good chance from February of 16 to February of 18, we will see that 0.88 surplus possibly disappear and be in the negative for the first time since, it appears, 2012. So a lot of stories out there right now about how a lot of people think that the grand solar minimum or the solar minimum itself is a year and a half accelerated, that things are happening a lot faster than what they are supposed to be. And I don't find that statement surprising whatsoever, just because back in last January I was told that things were being accelerated, that this person that shared this information with me felt like that everything was happening about a year and a half earlier than previously expected. So, and just looking at the top story today, U.S. average temperature plummets to 11 degrees Fahrenheit. I know here in Buffalo, we woke up to -3. And it says here 85% of the nation is below freezing and nearly 1/3 is below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The forecast is cold. The forecast is for cold air to continue to flow down out of Canada into the central and eastern U.S. for most of the coming week. And when I took a look at our 7-day forecast, I watched the 14-day, 15-day forecast, and we have seen some models suggest a sort of a mild fall. When I say mild, I mean upper 30s to mid 30s. So, and each week those keep getting pushed back out of the picture. And so far on this particular model, it's been pushed out of the picture all the way together now. It was once a theory that we were going to be somewhere around the mid 30s by next week, and the latest temperature forecast has got us no higher than the mid 20s in the next 10 to 15 days. And right now, this week is definitely cold for 2018, but we've got much colder air on the way, and I'll go ahead and roll through the GFS here, the precipitation forecast here, and we see pretty quiet. That storm over here in the Atlantic, the Northeast, New England, you guys are going to be active, but then somewhere around January 8th, we see a pretty big snowstorm hitting across the northern plains through the Midwest and into the East Coast and the Western New York area, and there was another one there on January 14th. And, you know, what I noticed on the 14th is, let me see if I can go back to that real quick. This was where they originally had thought we were going to see a possible, the original warm up. And for us in this area, and right here is that snow rain line. And as you can see, Western New York, which is where we're located, all the way down to Southwest Ohio and parts of Northern Kentucky, they're going to be in that cold air the whole time. So this warm air, this rain, which had thought originally was going to come up all the way into the Western New York area, is now being pushed further down south. So again, this is January 15th, 14 days out. I really don't like paying attention to any kind of forecast outside of 4 to 6 days, honestly. But it's just interesting, too, to watch how these GFS models change. Back here to the first, again, pretty quiet right now. There's a storm that we might see fire up here in the New England area by the 5th. And it looks like everybody gets a piece of the action here. Another big snowstorm moving in by the 8th of January. Kind of lingering lake effects for us still into the 10th. Erie getting blasted some more, and then that snowstorm we were just talking about for the 14th, and it looks like more to come as far back west coming out of. And the trend so far too, I've noticed, is everything that's come out of Canada has come up here in the northwest and then kind of downhill sloped with the cold air. So that trend is not going to change. All that moisture in the northwest is going to continue to feed the systems that come through the northern plains, the Midwest, and the Northeast. So for the long term, at least for the next 2 to 3 weeks, it looks like it's going to be more the same for us up here. Below average temperatures. I know the Weather Channel is already talking about how the areas of the northeastern parts of the United States, northern Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, northern plains, they're going to get colder than average temperatures, which means colder than what you're normally used to. And there's another level, of course, below, way below cold, and there is some of that as well up in the northern part of the country. But for the most part, where we're seeing the cold weather right now, the northwest, the northern plains, the Midwest, the northeast, that's where the cold air is going to stay throughout much of the winter. And that's not saying that the country won't experience a dip in the jet stream as well. There might be another cold shot in Texas later this winter. And, you know, the rest of the world is way above average, I just saw in the chat. And absolutely, again, this solar minimum is only in the very, very beginning. We are stepping into solar cycle number 25 in 2019. So, and a lot of scientists are agreeing that this cycle is going to be a very deep minimum, but there's also a lot of question marks about what's to come, because so far, from what I've seen in the mainstream media, this is the fastest declining grand solar minimum or solar minimum that they have on recorded history. And when I hear things like that, you know, it makes me want to pay a little more attention and keep an eye on things up here. One thing I'll say about the prediction for this winter that I received back in the summertime, we saw the snow cover Mari and I did the other day. Maybe I can find a image of that for you guys. Oh, it was on Dr. Roy Spencer. So he has a map of snow depth, and we were looking at it on the Weather Channel, but this only shows the northeast part of the country and the eastern side. But this is where the snow cutoff line is in a lot of projected maps of when things get really cold here as far as ice age type conditions, glaciation. So to see that line already forming right now in the very, very beginning stages, this is something that I think throughout the year, 2018 is going to be a newsmaker. Definitely, I'm expecting a lot less sunspots after watching the last few months of 2017, how we've accelerated. We went from somewhere in the mid-60s, and then the last couple months we soared into the low 100s. And of course, starting off January 1st in the 100% class of spotless days. Of course, it's only the first day of January. I'm just being facetious here. But I don't think that it's out of the question to see 200 spotless days this year or more. 28% of 17, 9%, which is the very beginning of the minimum period, and we accelerated, we more than doubled in 2017. So it's actually went up 3 times the amount of spotless days from 16 to 17. So it'll be very, very curious to see how 2018 shapes out. Small G1 geomagnetic storm today. It's already subsided significantly. We're at a KP of 1 right now. And another thing that I kind of learned about KP, and again, I'm not no expert here, guys. I've never claimed that from the beginning, but I'm learning a lot along the way. KP also, not only does it measure the volume of highly charged particles that are entering our atmosphere, but also it also measures the south of the northern lights, how south they can go. So if you're looking at a KP of about 7, which is a G3 storm, G4, close to that, you're going to see northern lights in western New York and the northeast and stuff like that. If you get KP indices of 9, you're going to see the auroras go as far south as the Tennessee Valley. So just something else I learned about KP. I just thought it was just charged particle, the abundance of it, but also it also shows you the leading edge of where you can see auroras from. And looking at it right now, KP of 1, you're only going to see them up far north. The sun, coronal hole that's facing away from us, looks like we got one in the eastern limb of the sun. But to me, overall, and for the last 4 weeks, I've noticed the corona of the sun has looked very weak anyway. So not a lot of action as far as sunspots or flares at all. We had a couple of days last week with some sunspots, very weak ones. They appeared late in the cycle. I don't think they had any solar flares with them at all. So that's a good picture right there. That's a moon halo. And again, this has to do with the temperature in the atmosphere, the ice crystals. That's why we're seeing these rainbows. They're absolutely gorgeous. So the colder weather we get, and we actually have a full moon, Mari, this week. So it's going to be pretty cold this week. I think we should try to get out and get some photos, and maybe we can capture a moon halo as cold as it's going to be here. I know they're forecasting the temperatures in the Buffalo area by the end of this week. I do believe we're going to be at -6 for 3 days. Well, not 3 days, but we'll be in the negative for lows in that time. Now here's a look at the temperature outlook in the coming weeks. Again, this is out too far in my opinion. Here's the beginning of the month right here. Pretty cold. January 1st, we see that cold air rush back in. Again, a second blast. It looks like it tries to warm up, but much of the country is freezing. All the way through the 6th of January, that warm line starts to come up a little bit around the 8th. And there's that little 8th and 9th area where we might see temperatures in the mid-30s. This green doesn't mean warm up. This just means more closer to 35 degrees in that green line. So it's amazing to see how far south that we're going to see these cold temperatures very early in January, and looking up north in Canada. My goodness. So it looks like for folks up here in the Northeast, Ohio, the northern plains like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Montana, South Dakota, Iowa, northern Indiana, northern Illinois, and Michigan, it looks like it's going to be a very cold January for us and for the foreseeable future. And like I said, that pattern, you can see the ridge right here. The temperature is setting up in the northwest, and all this cold air that's just dropping down south, it's pulling that moisture with it. So an impressive start to the 2018 winter. If anything, we are slightly below average cold. And when you think about that, if this is slightly below average, I don't want to know what way below average feels like, because slightly below average after the last 2 mild winters, it does feel a lot colder than normal. And, Mari, you've been in this area for 20 years. As far as your experience, I mean, where do you rank the last week? I'd say the last week, really, of cold air.
Well, I mean, the cold is bitter. And to see it on a map, how our country is just below temperature, is really impressive. So, snowfall-wise, I would say we're falling about average. Temperature-wise, it's shocking. I don't remember ever in the 2 decades I've lived in Buffalo fighting with the temperature the way I have end of December into January. I mean, I have been fighting with frozen pipes, busted pipes.
Yeah.
And, it seems like every day we're trying to warm stuff up here so we can keep the water flowing. It's crazy. It's cold. So, God, I just don't even want to look at the heat bill when it comes.
And that's a thing. That's another thing. That's the advice to homeowners out there that have tenants that rent. This year you cannot skim back on that heat bill, because if you do, you're going to have a mess on your hands.
I mean, I'm definitely learning where the house needs more insulation because typical winters, I've gotten away with it. Last winter, we had a very mild winter, minus like 1 or 2 snowstorms. But this bitter cold, we expected, a sort of a harsh winter.
We did.
I can only imagine what the rest of the year, usually February and March in Buffalo are just really cold and brutal. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this cold front progresses into the rest of the winter, for sure.
Well, and this, like I said, this 15-day outlook, it really, to me, this line, how far south this cold air is pushing everything, I don't see January. There is a slight talk of a January thaw, and right around the middle of the week next week, the 8th and 9th, it kind of acts like it wants to, but that cold air just comes back in and reinforces itself. And then right around the 14th, we get a flirtatious system of bringing a little bit milder air. But again, that green just represents the 30s and 40s. I mean, look,
Lake Erie also is not frozen yet, and as anyone who's familiar in this area, Lake Erie is its own snow machine. So it hasn't frozen, even with these bitter colds. I just checked what the temperatures at Lake Erie, and the website I checked was National Weather Service, said it was 35. So we're still waiting for the lake to freeze because, until that lake freezes, we are subject to lake effect, fun precipitation.
Yeah, we drove, actually. I want to see if I can find a story on this. I can't imagine that we won't see it on this channel here. But the Erie storm in Pennsylvania, guys, that was no joke. We had to make a drive to Northeast Ohio for the holiday season, and the drive there was awful. We had freezing rain that day, and that was, not fun to drive in. But then during the week, while we were waiting to make that trip again, Erie gets drilled with 63 inches of snow. And I remember driving through it this past Friday, the 29th, and I was thoroughly impressed with all of the road work that had been done on the highways. They had been cleared phenomenally. But these are actual pictures more inland of Erie here. And that lake effect snow is no joke, folks. This is similar to what Buffalo got back in 2014. Buffalo ended up with 8 feet, though, in the same time period. They still got close to 6 feet of snow. And right now, off the lakes, we're still dealing. And what I was saying on the Friday, though, we were driving back all the way up I-90, and this area is still getting plagued with lake effect of snow. So the reason why Mari's bringing up the temperature of the lake, it's not frozen all the way, that means we're still going to get not just the snowstorms that are coming through from the northwest, but now we're still dealing with these pop-up lake effect snow events that can happen within a 24-hour period without really warning. I mean, 4 inches was the warning that they got back in 2014 when they got the 8 feet of snow. So they went from 4 inches to 8 feet. I mean, that's just how these lake effect events could be. But right now, the water's getting colder by the minute, for sure. Some of the rivers are starting to freeze up here in town as well. And it's actually kind of looking beautiful. There's snow on top of the ice of the frozen parts of the rivers and creeks, so it looks kind of polar up here. But man, winter is definitely here, no doubt about it. And the thing about last summer, or whatever that was in the Northeast, I know there was parts of the country like Vegas and California, you guys felt the heat this year, but here in the Northeast, it almost did not feel as if we had much of a summer, if any at all. I know upstate New York hit the 90s a few times, but Western New York really stayed quite reasonable, mid-70s all summer. So it'll be curious to see where we're sitting at this spring. How far do we see that winter snow? Do we get snowstorms in April this year? Is this the year? I mean, you've lived up here for 20 years. Do we get snow like that in April and May?
Not really in May. I mean, a lot of the snow you'll see here in April and May are from the lake effect snows that are left behind. The last time we had snow that late in the season, I believe, was in 2014 when we had that freak lake effect storm. I remember the day before that storm came. Actually, it was the day of, right before it hit. Predicted in my area we were supposed to get 4 inches. And we got, I think it was close to 6 feet.
Well,
so
just like that storm a week ago in the south. I have a friend that lives in Dallas, Georgia, and he got 13 inches of snow. And, he'd been there all of his life, and he said, I've never seen anything like this in my life. So I don't care where you live, 13 inches of snow that far south, that's pretty freaking impressive. The fact that it was cold enough for 13 inches to accumulate, it looked like a winter wonderland there. Definitely seeing some cold weather and snow records being broke here very early in the winter. And the saying up here in the Northeast is once it starts off really cold, it doesn't let up. It normally is a sign that it's going to stay bad for the whole winter. So we'll see. Right now, it definitely looks like most of this country is stuck in this pattern. We probably have about a third of the country that's probably in the average to above average department, but the rest of us, we're freezing. And, Weather Channel yesterday, -- story, they just had a headline that said, North America, deep freeze. Looking at Canada, if you think it's cold here, think about the folks up here in Canada.
Yeah, -34, and that's not a wind chill.
That's not a wind chill.
Yeah.
How do pipes... I spoke with a subscriber today, Pisces, and he was telling me about an incident that happened back in '79 in Maryland, and we were talking about the snow that he received. It was a boatload of snow, and then within a 12-hour period, it warmed up to 70 degrees and melted. And they had flash floods everywhere because of it. And I guess NASA said that they had a space shuttle that did something in the ozone, and just really weird story, and intrigued. I'm going to look more into that. But he was also telling me about where there was an area that got to -20 for so long that this neighborhood, they were putting out warmers underneath their cars because at -20, some of these cars were freezing to the damn roads. And tires exploding in that kind of cold. So think about that. If you're sitting in a -34 for a low, I can't imagine how long pipes, anything could last in that cold. It's just incredible stories, and we've had this kind of cold before. It's nothing new, but it's always something to talk about when you haven't seen it in a while. And let's be honest. Up until about 2004, 2006, somewhere in that area, it's been warming. Since the 70s was cold, and then around the 90s it started warming. And then in 2004, it kicked in big time, and we didn't show any kind of negative temperatures in that time from the 96 on. It warmed. Up until now, we're starting to see a huge decline, but the pattern's very, very clear, and I'll go ahead and just show you what I'm talking about. The global anomaly temperature, the chart that I like to refer to a lot, which I find, no matter whether you can agree with it or not, it shows the truth. And hopefully by the second or the third, we'll see the update. He's got a section that shows you all the numbers. Bear with me, folks. Well, anyway, there is he has an insert here where he shows all the data for each month from 79 and beyond. And quite impressive that such a thing has to be kept track of to begin with. Otherwise, okay, here we go. Well, this is from 2016, but I've been looking around, but it shows you here, we've been in a gain, plus 55, then you had that plus 85, plus 76, and each month it's steadily kind of gone up and down, but here lately, ever since June when we had the 0.21, it kind of went back up slowly, and then we peaked here about 0.63 Celsius above. And then we had that major drop in November to 0.36. So December's numbers should be out in a couple of days, and we will then get an idea of how fast this is actually accelerating as far as cooling off the planet, because a lot of scientists are warning that we're only going to see 0.3 Celsius drop in the global temps, and that's fine and dandy, but as far as where we're at right now, it's already 3 times faster than what they're predicting for the entire minimum. So again, this is going to have to be another wait and see. That's all. All right, well, look, I'm going to wrap this up, but I want to go back to the forum real quick. I invite everybody to check out the forum, to register. You'll have access to the chat where everybody can kind of just get together. Of course, I have to log in. I'm not going to do that right now, but the chat's pretty cool. There's a calendar in here. It shows you when our live shows. One's scheduled for Monday, one's for Thursday as well. But it's a little bit more organized for us, and try to keep the topics and information flowing. Even if there's a problem with getting, let's say, videos up on YouTube, we still can come to this category of forum here with news, articles, general stuff for the moderators. People who are moderators on our channels now and in Slack will be senior mods on this forum. Then, extreme weather, volcanoes, earthquakes, prepper talks. I like this one here. There's a couple of threads I threw in already for homesteading. I found a couple of sites on the internet that these people that made these websites were definitely they're doing it right, and they're putting a lot of work into prepping and how to stay warm and waterproofing shoes and stuff like that. So I mean, just a little bit of everything for our subscribers or people who are a little bit more curious about the Grand Solar Minimum, who want to learn a lot more with the topic. Because a lot of times if you watch a lot of these other Grand Solar Minimum channels, they get technical and you might not understand all the technical terms and what certain things mean. So we want to try to provide a foundation of education for folks to get the basics down, to understand what it means in the minimum. We want to be able to have an area where people can, all over the world, share their weather conditions. Tell us what's going on. Hey, we saw 20 inches in 2 hours, or whatever crazy event that might happen that doesn't get put online or in the media. So this is just another way for people to come together and basically just put your heads together and bounce ideas off each other. And the more aware we are, the more we learn together, the more familiar we are with these upcoming events, the more calm, cool that we'll be in the driver's seat when dealing with a situation, and such as dealing with frozen pipes. I'm glad it happened when it happened, because if it happens again, I think Mari and I have a system and we have an idea how we're going to tackle it the next time. So going through these beginning stages and learning these different weather terms and all the other Grand Solar Minimum terms that we need to learn, it's going to help. This year helped lay out a good foundation, and that's what this website is going to do as well. GrandSolarMinimum.com. It's still in work. Mari wants to have it up by February. But I've seen what she's wanting to do to the website, and we've got some really exciting things coming up. So that's going to do it for us today here at the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Again, thank you guys for sticking with us, standing by, and we want to present information about the Grand Solar Minimum, the truth about the Grand Solar Minimum, accurate, and we want to continue with that. With there's going to be more interviews this year with more scientists all over the world. There's going to be an uptick as far as coverage from this channel. We want to make sure that the proper information is presented the right way. All right, guys, we'll talk soon. Have a wonderful, happy New Year's. Wilbarger are in agreement, and we have learned many things from Lee Wilbarger. But as I stated earlier, this was more of a personal conflict of interest, and from there we are moving forward. The videos with Valentina Zarkova and John Casey are going to be re-released. We were asked by Lee himself that his name or his voice not be used on our channel anymore. So we have edited the videos of Casey and Valentina Zarkova. Mari will speak on behalf of Lee and ask the same exact questions. It'll just be edited with Mari's voice asking the question instead of Lee. Now, we've had these videos down for a few months, and the reason why we're doing this is that we're getting a lot of requests for the videos. People still want to see the videos, and Mari and I both agree that the information is solid enough. This weather down here, which is the solar updates, I've already put in a few already, of course, knowing me. Just a few things, a brief summary of what the solar conditions are for the day-to-day. But Mari kind of surprised me with this. I knew that she had been working on getting a website going for the Grand Solar Minimum channel. We wanted to expand our platform. And as we said last year before the departure, we wanted to focus more on reporting the Grand Solar Minimum as it happens. Predictions are welcomed and thoughts are welcome. Discussions on what could happen are also welcome. But we don't want to be fixated on a channel that wants to be first on something. We just want to report and educate as many people as possible about the Grand Solar Minimum and what's to come. Like I told you before, Mari and I firmly believe that and it should be available. So just to get that, to start everything off, to let everyone know, that way there's no questions moving forward. Happy New Year, and thank you for joining us today on the Grand Solar Minimum channel. So, anyway, moving along, I want to show off a new feature for the Grand Solar Minimum channel. And we're trying to take things up a little bit. This is our forum that is also right now being incorporated with the grandsolarminimum.com, the website that Mari has built and has continued to build. Along with the YouTube videos, I think it would be in the best interest to have this link available to our subscribers here on YouTube. And this can be a spot where we could all come together and discuss various topics. We have space. Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. So today embarks the first day of 2018, and with that, the first day of a new year for the Grand Solar Minimum channel. I wanted to start off today with a couple announcements. First, I wanted to address the situation with the departure of Lee Wheelbarger. That was done on a personal conflict of interest. The views of the Grand Solar Minimum channel and Lee, this is definitely a very impressive beginning to a minimum on any scale. We've seen more and more articles jump up in the mainstream media talking about the records are going to be broke because we're going into a solar minimum. And just a year ago, there wasn't anybody talking about in the mainstream. We weren't talking about cold records being broke. We were talking about all blue event by 2017, where all the caps had been melted, and we would see our first all blue event by 2017. That claim was made in 16, by the way. So as you see, we're nowhere near that. In fact, we have seen probably the most coldest weather since the 2013-2014 polar vortex. And just wanted to share this quickly with you guys on Dr. Roy Spencer.